The Parramatta Eels, a team that's looking so dodgy this year that they might get the wooden spoon.
Yeah, but we beat the Panthers.
The Parramatta Eels, congratulations to them. They finally got a win this week in round 4, but it's been a tough start to the year, Longy.
Let's talk about that game. I mean, look, locked it up against the Panthers, won in the clutch. Mitch Moses nailed his field goal, straight in front, but it was good to see.
Yeah, look, I think I've had no faith in Moses kicking that field goal, by the way. I'm not sure whether...
Come on.
Whether Parramatta fans, thought that it was going over or not. I think Moses is one of those guys where you don't expect him to be clutch, but sometimes he is. So I would like to say that it was a bit of a redemption moment for him. His goal kicking has cost him a couple of wins in recent weeks as well, and he just signed a new contract that afternoon. So, good for Mitchell Moses. One thing I want to ask you, though, is how has the Eels' start to the season been for you? I know it's been a lot of pain.
Oh, yeah. Look, I'm a season member for Parramatta, so I go to most games. It's been tough. I mean, they've been very close games. They've been games that each game has felt winnable. And I think a points differential after 3 rounds is -12 or something after 3 losses. So, we can go through the games. But
let's go on that. Let's go through these games. So, round 1, you turn up at Combank Stadium after losing the grand final last year. You face Melbourne, a team that, is... Most of the time, you get up for that game. And you go out to a lead, and what happened after that?
I mean, let's look at that game a bit here, because, we were missing some guys, but so were Melbourne. And I can't use injuries as an excuse, because they had a lot of guys out. For that game, Para were the better side on the day. Para should have won that game. There was a pretty kickable shot from Moses that went to the side, and probably would have won us that game, 14-12 in regulation. But, no, look, I was pretty disappointed. Then you went through to Golden Point. I can't blame a guy like Hopgood in that situation because he was the one who missed that tackle, but he played 84 minutes.
He's been outstanding this year.
Yeah, and to do what he does, it was 50-plus tackles, 150-plus meters. I think it was 7 offloads in that game or something like that. Like, he just created so much for Parramatta. To have to make a tackle on Harry Grant in the 84th minute by himself.
Big ask.
Yeah, I'm not putting any blame on him. I do think he needs to play more like 60 minutes a game because he's, again, such an explosive player, plays with such intensity. A bit like we talk about Brandon Smith, right? He shouldn't play 80 either because of the intensity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ruben Cotter, don't play him for 80 minutes. You're going to burn him out. Like, these guys that play like that can't play 80, and I think because of our lack of depth in the middle forward spots, we've had to play these guys for big minutes.
Yeah, that's something that I've kind of always noticed about Parramatta is one thing as well that I want to point out is the bench for Parramatta. It's not a very big feature. I think you use almost 6 interchanges a week on just interchanging Paulo and RCG. So I think one of the things I read last year is that Parramatta actually has the worst bench usage in the comp and that Brad Arthur doesn't actually use the players on his bench, often keeping a guy like Jake Arthur on the bench and not even playing him in the game. So it's a wasted bench spot. Is that something that you've noticed?
It's a mixed bag. And I mean, let's jump forward right against that Panthers-Eels game. 10 minutes to go, RCG and Paulo both came off. We're up by 8 points. RCG and Paulo came off. We concede a try, 5 minutes to go. Both come right back on.
Yeah.
I think our bench usage has been pretty average. And, we go to that Sharks game next. So we lost that one 30-26. Again, some crucial missed tackles, some tired legs.
No Hines is the big point out of that game. The Sharks didn't have the Dally M medal winner from last year, yet put on 30 points.
This is where I think we've got some free spots in our roster. And I think we need to look at a couple of those bench forwards. So we look at guys like Royce Hunt at Cronulla. You look at some of the other recruits that have popped up at different teams. Tigers have some pretty strong guys who come off the bench as well. Across the team, like a Kamika Mika came from Parramatta, went to the Storm.
Yep.
He's great. Like, we need a few of those guys who can come off the bench and play 20 or 30 minutes and just be explosive.
Yeah, I think as well, you were talking about depth in those positions as well. Like, when you've got... Because Paulo is actually facing a ban this week. Who do you think is going to step up and take that starting prop role? Is it going to be Hopgood? Is Ryan Madison going to come on and play lock? Maybe play front row? Like, it can't be Wiramu Greg or Makatoa. Because even though Makatoa had a bit of a crack last week, I don't see him playing more than 30 minutes a game. Because he hasn't done it for the last 3 years while he's been on the bench.
That's the problem for us.
Depth is an issue.
Yeah, that's the problem for us. I don't think we can replace Paulo.
No.
I think what you're saying about Madison going to the middle is probably what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
He plays lock. Maybe Hopgood goes to prop. We see Matt Dury come back into the starting team. That's probably how it goes. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We don't have those backup options in the middle.
Mm.
And, even looking at a team like Canberra, who's not doing that well, they got Pasami Solo, right? And he's turned up for them while Josh Papali'i's been out and played great footy.
Yeah.
So we just don't have that guy
to come in and do a job that someone previously had. I think as well, not only did you leak 30 points to the Sharks without Nico Hines, it then transitioned to the next game where, Para, for me, historically, have been a pretty good defensive team.
Yep.
And you let the Sea Eagles score 34 points as well. It was back-to-back games of 34 points. And this is my thing with Para. I don't worry about them turning up against Penrith. In fact, if you actually go back and look at it, I said that the most likely game that you guys were going to win out of the first 5 was against Penrith. So the Sea Eagles are a bit of a bogey team for you guys. Out of Brookvale, tough matchup. And I think for Para, they were good for about a total of 15 minutes in that game. And still managed to get within scoring distance.
Well, let's go 34-30. There was a shocking forward pass called on that RCG try that changed the dynamic of the game. And again, I think with all these games, we're looking at a 4-point, 4-point, 4-point performance. Each one was a 4-point loss. Each one had crucial moments where Parramatta could have nailed it. Against the Sharks, there were some very, very poor defensive plays when Gutho went off 15 minutes because everyone just forgot how to hold the line. Right, and Will Kennedy scored a hat-trick. But, against Manly, Manly are a more potent attack than, the Hines-less Cronulla Sharks. So I'm not as judgmental of that, especially when you consider that Madison's coming back the following week and Sean Lane's back pretty soon too. Mm-hmm. I think Para started to look more like themselves in that game. And I was happy to see the attack. And, rounds 2 and 3, we started to see Dylan Brown sort of wake up again as well. So I was happy to see that. Mitch Moses has been playing pretty good footy other than his goal kicking as well. So... No, I wasn't as worried in that game, and it all culminated in the 4th game where we beat Penrith.
Yeah. I think the other thing I kind of want to ask you, I've got maybe a bit of a double question here. Do Parramatta, in your eyes, have that killer instinct to punish teams when they're up by about 12 to 16 points?
No, so we were up by 8 against the Panthers, and we took off our starting props. We just get way too comfortable as a team whenever we have any sort of lead. And I don't know if it's arrogance or maybe it's a conservative approach, or I'm not even sure what it is. But no, we don't put the foot on the throat when we're on top, and that's something that we need to do because we've had some pretty pivotal games where we've been on top and we've given it away. And actually, all these games really were games where we were on top and we gave it away.
I would totally agree with you in the sense that you're okay when you're from behind because then you've got to play that expansive footy that makes Para special. We saw that in the Manly game. But, the foot off the throttle thing, it's a very common thing for Parramatta. They're the only team I know that has maybe a 15, 16-point lead going in the last 10 minutes that could possibly lose that game. So I've seen it too many times to think anything else. And I think the other question I wanted to ask you just really quickly, now that Moses has his contract, for you, is the pressure on him to now deliver? If he doesn't deliver a premiership, would you consider it a wasted signing?
It's a hard question. All right, so I'm going to start by saying that I think he's worth the money or close to it. It's very hard to get a top line halfback right now. And you look at teams that don't have them, like the Bulldogs, for example, that have pretty much every other piece in place. And they can't do much. You look at the Tigers, who have been stuck with Luke Brooks, who's sort of struggled a bit, and they haven't been able to do much. I'm not blaming him for that. But I think Moses was a good signing. I think for his career... when I'm doing player rankings, I want to push Moses further up on club performance, but he doesn't have those representative performances that other guys do, and hasn't had that sort of postseason success yet either.
Hasn't even gotten accolades from the NRL as well. You look at it, some of these guys have gotten Dally M halfback of the year, or even close to winning the Dally M. I think Gutho went closer than him a couple of years ago, and seems that Mitchell Moses, just because there's some players just above him, is such an afterthought a lot of the time.
He's so unlucky though, because Nathan Cleary's a bit younger than him.
Yeah.
And if he was a bit older and he was in that period of the Blues where, you know, Hodkinson was being picked and Mitchell Pearce was coming in over and over again. Moses would have had about 5 years where he was the Blues halfback, I reckon. Like, he's that good. But he's been a bit unlucky in that he hasn't been able to get into that Blues side. He hasn't really had the ball bounce his way in the finals. There have been a few moments that have changed that for him. And I think he ends up with a premiership. I don't want to call anyone a failure or a success, but Moses has had a great career. But if you were grading his career against some of the other halfbacks in the league, Moses versus Reynolds, for example.
DCE.
Yeah, DCE is ahead because of representative performances. But Reynolds is the comparison for me, because Reynolds hasn't played much rep footy. Reynolds has gotten it done in the postseason. He's won competitions. He's moved clubs. He's transformed the Broncos. I think he's a big part of that.
And he's played more rep footy.
Yeah. And if Moses can win a competition or two, you could maybe put him above Reynolds. But right now, Reynolds is just head and shoulders above him because of that postseason success. And that's just a tick box that we're going to look at from a guy who leads a team. Yeah,
it's an extremely hard thing to do as well, win a comp. You know,
it's a team game.
Yeah, there's reasons why guys like Jonathan Thurston won one in his entire career as well. As far as matchups coming up, you know, you guys have got the Roosters, the Tigers, the Dogs, and then the Broncos next. A couple of tough matchups in there. A couple that you should expect to win, although you are playing the Tigers on Easter Monday again. And that's always a mouth-watering matchup.
It's always fun, yeah. I mean, look, the Chooks will be really fun. Chooks don't have Joey Manu for that game. So, but we don't have Junior Paulo. I was going to say, I expect us to go well in the middle. But if we have our full forward pack, the Roosters are a bit fragile in the middle, but we're fragile right now as well. So... Yep. That could be anything, that game. I mean, the Tigers, we have to beat the Tigers. The Dogs beat us last time we versed them, but we should beat the Dogs. But I'll tell you what, Josh Adokar could absolutely scorch our guys. I mean, is he up against...
Simonson.
Yeah, he's up against Simonson. He could cook Simonson. That's actually kind of scary. The Broncos, I'm excited about the Broncos game because... that's going to be a real litmus test because we're going to have Sean Lane back for that game. We'll have Madison back for that game. Junior Paulo back for that game. Our pack will be there. And the Broncos have the best forward pack in the comp this year.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's amazing. So that's going to be a mouth-watering matchup. And if that's anything other than a competitive game, write the season off.
All right.
That's where I'm at. And I just want to throw in a few after that. Knights, Titans, Raiders, a little bit juicier. So, don't stress too much. I'm certain that we're going to make the 8.
Okay. Any final success?
I think top 8. I think it'll largely depend on injuries. I think Brad Arthur's been quoted saying we have a few roster spots open and a bit of salary cap open too. I think if we're a smart team, we're going to look at Cronulla's stocks and we're going to say, hey, Connor Tracy, hey, Iro, hey, maybe some of the forwards that aren't getting a crack at other clubs either. Maybe a Joe Hengawi, who's in reserve grade for the Tigers this week. Absolutely. Look at those guys and we say, hey, let's bolster the stocks. Let's get it done, and Parramatta can win the comp.
All right, guys. Well, you've heard it here first. No need to worry for Para fans. It's all good. If you like more content like this, please make sure that you like and subscribe the video. We're bringing out so much content lately, guys, so stay tuned for more.